Located off Interstate 70, 50 miles east of Columbus, rests the city of Zanesville. With a population of roughly 25,000, Zanesville is the largest city in Muskingum County. Situated in what is virtually an all-white county is the unique neighborhood of Coal Run, a community of mixed-race families on the border of Zanesville who are perceived as the only African-American neighborhood in the county.
Coal Run's just a beautiful, calm place, located just a little bit of the outskirts of Zanesville off Adamsville Road. The community makeup is African American, but we do have a mixture of half white and half black, biracial community.
The Coal Run community is an average families. They're hard workers. Most of them had jobs, raised their kids, just try to make ends meet. It's a very good community, very wonderful community, actually. I feel blessed to be raised in this area.
I lived down the road with my mother and dad. We moved here in '47. When I got married in '56, we bought this house right here. We've been here ever since.
Most of my relatives lives out in here. My uncle lived right next door there. And he said, there's property for sale right next to me. So I bought some property there. And then I began to build me a house, and I built it all myself. And I've been out here ever since, about 47 years.
On Coal Run, where we was born and raised, we wasn't blessed with a good water.
That's why they called it Coal Run, because on both sides was coal mines. Once the mines closed up, the acid water would seep out of the mines, and it would go into the rock, and then you try to drill, and the water would be just pure acid water. Just to drink it tastes like rotten eggs.
There was a creek that ran through the Coal Run, Langan Lane area, and the water was orangish in color, and at the bottom it looked like a sulfur looking. That water would leak into people's wells and cisterns, and it had a lot of sulfur and iron in it, and a lot of the families had trouble with wells and cisterns in that area due to that.
It was apparent that the residents of Coal Run were going to have to look elsewhere for their water. Meanwhile, the city of Zanesville, Muskingum County, and their water authorities were constructing water projects throughout the region. And in 1954, a water line was constructed that ran east of the city along Old Adamsville Road just north of Coal Run. The line ran partway down Langan Lane, servicing the white households, and stopped at the last home before the Coal Run neighborhood.
Where the water stopped, it was above the hill near Adamsville Road. It was less than a mile from our home.
They brung the water up just about a block away from us, maybe 2 blocks, and that's all the farther they come.
It would have been easier for them to go right through Coal Run Road and drop off water to the family and kept on going to the other place. It would have been cheaper, it would have been easier for them, and there was no reason for us not to have water.
Left behind with no public water, the residents of Coal Run had to be resourceful and devise their own methods to provide water for their families, some ways more difficult than others. And regardless of how the residents were able to obtain water, one thing remained certain: their lives were fundamentally affected by the lack of this basic service.
Most of the percentage of families in the Coal Run, Langan Lane area had cisterns. They're things that you put in the ground that hold water. They would haul water into those cisterns. You would pay a water person that had a huge truck to bring water, loads of water in. And then a lot of the families would figure out ways to haul their own water. They would buy tanks, plastic or metal, or make shift things that would hold water so that they could get water to their homes.
Sometimes we have water. We collect it in rain barrels. A lot of our washing of clothes and dishwashing, our hair and everything, giving bath, we had a rain barrel on the side of our house. We would collect water in rain barrels.
We had to watch how much we used. We could only allow the kids and stuff to take showers or baths every other day or two. They couldn't take baths and showers every day because you just run out of water if you did.
We had to make sure that we preserve literally each drop of water that we had.
We had outside bathrooms, and my mom just used a little tub to do her dishes, and we had foot tubs. We took a bath. We shared our water, like 3 kids would use the bath water at a time. Then there was 7 of us, or took a bath out of the creek, or basically when it rained.
My uncle come by right after we moved there. He said, that water tastes like it's got a dead rat in it. And I moved the cistern top, the lid, and it had 3 of them floating in there.
Miss Helen would have to drop a bucket into her cistern, and she would pull that bucket up with a rope and carry water into her home. As a child, I thought that was a really neat thing, and she would always kind of make sure that I didn't fall in the cistern and stuff. But as an adult, it was very hurtful to watch her go through that.
My youngest, she went and stayed all night with a friend of hers, and when she came home, she said, "Mom, why haven't we got water like they have?" She said, "They can take baths and do everything, but we can't because we don't have no water."
As I cleaned out cisterns and pulled out bugs and frogs and mice and other creatures that crawls around, and I started looking at it, I said, my God, this is worse than the third world country's situation.
Determined not to be forgotten, the residents of Coal Run persistently requested water service, but time and time again their voices were ignored. Over the next 30 years, as the Coal Run residents' continued requests for water were denied, the city of Zanesville in Muskingum County continued to extend and improve water lines beyond the city limits, reaching the farthest areas of the county, with the lines often passing through the Coal Run residents' backyards, never reaching their homes.
My generation, my father's generation, my grandfather's generation had went to public officials and asked about getting public water to the Coal Run area.
They'd have meetings out at the firehouse, and we'd go to them, me and my brother and my cousins, and they'd, "Oh yeah, we're gonna put water in there, we're gonna put water in there."
I just know that they was trying to get water out there way before my mom passed away, which has been about 25 years ago now. But way before then, she signed for water, and she paid her deposit to get water and paid for a tap, which was a sign that water was right around the corner. To us, that's what it seemed like.
They would even come around and get money from some of us, saying they're going to put city water in, and there they take the water someplace else.
We're circled by water, and I could see if we was 3 or 4 miles away from a water source, but I'm not a mile and a half away from the biggest water source in Muskingum County, and I'm 3/4 a mile from the city limits, and there's a water line in front of my house, and my neighbors, where the people was white, they had city water just next door.
A guy come there and built a new house, and here they let him hook up to it. He was a white fella. Made you think that they was looking down on you because you didn't have no city water.
Bob Pletcher was the superintendent at the water station. And I'd go there and I'd talk to him about, couldn't we get water up through there? Why couldn't we hook onto the water lines that was already there? And he said, well, he says, no pressure, no pressure. And then somebody would move in up there, build a house next to me, and they'd hook them right up with water.
Water was just a stone throw away. I mean, it was running all around us, to the left, to the right, all around us.
They were always blaming it on the city was blaming it on the county. And whenever my mom would go to the meeting, they said they had no funds, there were no funds available, and it was not their responsibility.
They discussed water going to Channersville, which is about 15 miles away. I raised my hand. I said, well, what about Coal Run and Langdon Lane? The commissioner, she says, only way you people could get water is have Boost drop off 2 Spyro bombs through that rock. Everybody kind of laughed, and I didn't think it was funny. Then I told him, I said, well, I stood back up again. I said, my mother's getting kind of up in age. I said, I'd love to see her have water. And she said, I'll be lucky for a great-great-grandkid to see water in that holler. And I just realized it was time, somebody's got to step up to the base, because enough was enough.
On July 26th of 2002, the residents of Coal Run filed a complaint with the Ohio Civil Rights Commission, alleging that the city and county discriminated against them by allowing only white residents to connect to public water.
I was skeptical when we initially got the complaint And I was like, this is something from the 1940s or 50s. It can't possibly be so blatant to where the public water stops, where the white houses start and the black houses pick up. But when we went down there, it was right there.
In response to learning about the charge, surprise, disappointment. I would have to say that it was unique in a sense that not only the duration of the deprivation, the number of people who were involved, and frankly, the shocking nature of being deprived of something that most of us Americans take for granted, running water.
You shouldn't have to file a civil rights complaint to have your local government respond to your request and your needs.
A map was established, and the map unequivocally showed that the water stopped right where the black people lived. After a 10-month investigation, we reached the conclusion that there was probable cause to believe that the Ohio Civil Rights Act had been violated.
After we had helped the folks file complaints and we gathered evidence, I knew deep down that we need somebody who can help us take this to federal court. Then I thought about John Railman.
Vince told me about the investigation that he had done in Coal Run and the sort of stunning results that he had seen, and said it was quite a dire situation, and asked us to get involved. I could see right away that it was going to be a difficult case as well, because the events had taken place over a very, very long period of time, and to gather all of the evidence to make sure that everybody's memory was still good enough to tell the story and to prove the damages that they had suffered was going to be difficult.
We had 4.5 years of litigation that included taking literally 100 depositions, pouring through tens, maybe even hundreds of thousands of pages of documents. An extraordinarily resource-intensive case this was.
It was a hard-fought battle to even get before a jury and get to the point of having a trial in this case in order that we could bring claims that go all the way back to the 50s.
Held in Columbus at the United States District Court for the Southern District of Ohio, the trial began May 12, 2008. It was to last 6.5 weeks with over 80 witnesses giving testimony in the case.
The city of Zanesville's attempt to explain why they didn't bring water to the Coal Run neighborhood was simply that they didn't provide water outside of the city of Zanesville. And it's true, Coal Run neighborhood was outside of the city of Zanesville, but when we actually looked, you saw that the city of Zanesville did in fact run water lines outside of the city.
Another thing they said was, well, we can't get the funding. It's too expensive. And again, when we ended up looking at what ended up happening, we could see that on a per household basis, it was less expensive to bring water to Coal Run. And finally, they said, we didn't know that Coal Run wanted water. But at a certain point in time, there was a record, and there was clear testimony, and there was documentary evidence that members of the Coal Run community had been at meetings and had asked for water.
We drew up simply a picture of who had water and who didn't have water, and the pattern was so stark and so clear that the only difference between the people with water and the people without water was race. And that in of itself was the smoking gun, and that was what the defendants could never explain. And I think at the end of the day, that's what made the difference to the jury.
The jury had been out for 2 weeks, so we had been living in suspense for quite a while, and it had built up to that point. We found out that the jury had come back with a verdict.
The jury that ended up being seated in the case was a jury that nobody really throughout the trial had any idea how they were going to rule.
I was so nervous for our clients because they were so emotionally invested in being validated and being told you are right.
I got to the courtroom and Donna McEwen Lewis was sitting there, and I remember me and her looking at each other and smiling, and this is the day.
My heart was just a beating. When I saw Cindy there, I think emotion took over at that time, and we were just sitting there just holding hands, just waiting for the verdict.
They read the verdict. They said guilty.
Yes, City of Zanesville, yes, Muskegon County, you discriminated against this community. That's the first time I sat back in my chair and said, we actually have done it.
It was a triumph for me. I felt that the journey was worth it. And I felt that these people had got justice for what they deserved.
To see the elation on their faces, to reaffirm that we are a nation of laws and that these laws have purpose, and to see that law vindicated, I would say that it would be one of the high points in my career.
I took away the joy that we were able to make people feel whole again, restore some dignity. The system worked.
No matter how difficult the hurdles, no matter how hard it may look, if you pursue it and you pursue it with vigor and you pursue it with incredible persistence, in the end, justice will be done.
The jury found in favor of the Coal Run residents on all claims of discrimination and awarded $10.8 million in damages, one of the largest fair housing verdicts ever handed down. After 50 years of denials, excuses, and finger-pointing, water finally flowed to the neighborhood.
That day my phone rang all day. Everybody was so happy. All the neighbors started calling each other, and it was a real nice, happy day for all of us when we got water.
It felt so good that you could go in and use the shower. It just felt like you was in heaven.
They say it's the little things in life that makes a person happy, but that's probably one of my happiest moments in my life, was making sure this area had water.
I thank God that there was attorneys that was willing to take the case and let people know it might take a little while, but justice is in this country.
They really worked hard on our behalf, and they never give up. They just seemed like they was part of the family, and I'll never be able to thank them enough.
If you have the courage like these residents of the Coal Run neighborhood do, you can actually make a very, very significant difference, not only in your own lives, but for everybody in the country.
Because of our case, we hope it's a foundation that gives other people the impetus to fight, but also it's going to tell other governmental entities who are doing the same thing, we better stop this because they won that case up in Zanesville, Ohio.
If we can actually confront race like in this way, put it on the table and talk about it, and reach a verdict about it and allow people to close the book on it, if we can do that, we can get past race.